Here we go again with the weekend Apple news. Welcome back to the channel. So you know what we do on the channel by now. I think you do, right? If you're new though, what do? We go through about 20 different Apple related news stories. We go through a whole bunch of tech sales. I usually have a beer on the weekends. Today I have a Yingling. It's basically, I think, from the East Coast out there. It was not available in Chicago too easily to get before. I love it. It's a little bit darker here, but very, very smooth. Definitely try that out. Great beer. And then we just sit back and everyone enjoys the weekend and we go through these Apple news stories. So if you love Apple products, services, specials, tech in general, SSDs, everything else in between, sit back and relax and let's get into the weekend Apple news. Okay, so if you watch my channel before, you know I love the kind of the base level iPad for some reason. I love it, right? Now that's the 10th gen they called it. Now the 11th gen just came out, and if they call it the A16 now because that's the name of the chip. I don't know what Apple's doing there. But in any case, is it worth upgrading from the 10th gen up to the 11th gen? Probably not, but what are the key differences? I'm going to show you exact benchmarks right here so you understand exactly what you're getting if you actually do this, all right? Or if you want to buy one or the other. Here's an article from Mac Rumors that says iPad 10 versus iPad 11 buyer's guide. So first of all, I just want to go through a couple key changes here. And here's the 10th gen over here. Here's the 11th gen. And you can see right here, obviously we went from the A14 to the A16 chip. We're going to get into specific benchmarks in a second. The weird thing is it went from a 6-core CPU and it dropped down to a 5-core CPU. You can see it here. Now, that's a little unusual when you go up a version, but we'll see if that affects anything in a second. 11.8 billion transistors up to 16 billion. Clock speed went from 3.0 to 3.46. That's good. The neural engine's got 11 trillion operations per second on the 10th, up to 17 trillion. So that's a huge jump there. Now, the big jump here, the biggest thing that we saw here was 4 gigs to 6 gigs of memory. And this can make a difference in some of the benchmark tests as well. Bluetooth connectivity 5.2 to 5.3. Smart HDR went from 3 to 4. But the big difference down here, we're going to show this in a second, is 64 gigs starting up to 128. Is that going to make a difference on the speed of the SSD? Well, let's find out. Let's go through some of the benchmarks now, and then we'll kind of wrap this all up. And it actually did on the SSDs. Take a look at this. This is the SSD read test, megabytes per second. If you take a look down here, this is the new one over here. This is the old one. So the 10th gen on the reads here was 805. And the new iPad 16, because it's got double the storage, right? So it's got double those chips. Now, granted, that's the lowest model you can get. I know it's not an exact comparison because the other one only had 64. But still, the cost is the same, right? Or, you know, obviously we're getting sales too. But look at the difference here. This is the reads, so it's basically double, 1564, 805. That's pretty crazy. The next one is the write speeds. So on the 10th gen, you got 480 here only, and it went up to, on the iPad 16, I call it the 16 because it's really the 11th gen here, just this is the new one. You got 965, so 965 versus 480. You can see that's obviously a massive jump on the SSD or the performance of the SSD or the disk inside of the iPad. So that could be a big difference there. All right, let's look at Geekbench. Here's Geekbench 6 single core here. So the old one, here's the 10th gen, it had 2086. The new iPad A16 has a 2601. So 2086 to 2601. You can see that that's a pretty big difference of like around 500 and something points there. So that's a big percentage there, even though it's a kind of a small jump on the CPU. So as far as gaming and stuff or just normal tasks, I mean, sometimes that won't even affect gaming, but the normal tasks of just browsing and stuff, it's going to make a difference, especially with the SSD upgrade. Let's look at multi-core really quickly. Here's Geekbench 6 multi-core score. This is going to be 4902 up to 6173. That's a big jump in multi-core. Look at that. And it's just, from that one generation right there. So this is where you're going to get into things like games and stuff like that as well. You might see a bigger difference. Finally, graphics. Now, graphics is not as big of a difference, but we still got a jump here as well. Here's Geekbench 6 metal graphics score. Here's the iPad 10th gen, 17062. You can see it right here, up to 19904. So, I mean, that's it's only like a 12% increase or something, somewhere in that range. So that's not as big on the graphics, but the CPU and the disk are pretty huge there. And I think it's interesting, right? I mean, should you upgrade or should you, if you're going to buy one versus the other because you can get the other one cheaper, maybe you should get the new one. But if you're going to upgrade, I don't think it's worth it. But if you do want to buy it no matter what, over on Micro Center, they have the best deal right now. This is kind of their low price alert. Just came out, mind you. It's $314.99 right now. So it's already $35 off. This is the A6 Bionic 11-inch. They call it the 11-inch. It's really the 10.9 or whatever. They kind of, Apple does its little marketing there. But look at that. That's the lowest price I've seen it so far at Micro Center. So if you have a Micro Center near you, check it out. If you need to get it on Amazon, I think it's like 10 or 15 bucks more. It's not a big deal. But you might as well get the lowest price. And then finally, I just want to wrap this up by saying This is a case that I did a review on. You can check out my channel. This is in a case by ESR, and it's actually one of the best iPad cases with a keyboard, case and keyboard right here. And if you look on the screen over here, for the cost, I mean, instead of spending $200 or something, it's $79.99 right here. ESR iPad 11th gen, it used to be the 10th. It works on both of them. $79.99 right here. Well, it says right there, obviously, 10.9. So I totally recommend this. The keyboard works really good. The trackpad works it's really responsive. Has a really good battery life as well. So overall, if you're looking for a case for the iPad, for the basic iPad there, I totally recommend that one. And let's just keep moving. I hope everyone's having a great weekend. Cheers. We enjoy the weekends. That's actually later than I thought, though. It looks dark, but it's not. All right, Mac rumors. Now, if you're thinking about buying an M4 Mac Mini versus a Mac Studio, hear me out for a second. If you're a video editor, not even like me, someone that does it, hardcore video editing, extreme, you want to get probably the Mac Studio, and there's a big reason for it right here. It says Mac Mini versus the Mac Studio Buyer's Guide, 20 key differences compared. If you scroll down to this chart down here, we're going to see a couple things right off the bat, if I can get to the chart. So up here at the top, this is the M4 Mac Mini. This is the M4 Pro Mac Mini. This is the M4 Max. This is the the Mac Studio M4 Max, and this is the Mac Studio M3 Ultra. So they're all lined up here. If you go down, you're going to notice some weird things like 4.3 gigahertz is the clock speed maximum on all these little ones. And when you get to the Ultra, it actually goes down a little bit because it's using that M3 chip. But that doesn't mean much because you can see there's huge differences in cores and GPU cores, CPU cores. We're not going to talk about that. But if you're that video editor, these are the things that are going to matter right here. Couple little things. Memory bandwidth, this is the big one, and then there's even a bigger one. 120 gigabit per second memory bandwidth right here on the M4 Mac Mini. The M4 Pro doubles it, or actually more than doubles it to 273. Then it goes up to 546 on the M4 Max MAX Studio. And then it goes all the way up to 819 on the Ultra, which is huge right there. You can see that. Obviously, the RAM is going to make a difference depending on what you get and all that stuff. But the big difference is going to be right down here, the video encode engines, all right? So on the M4 versions, you can see it says video encode engine. But on the Studios, it's got two video encode engines. And then even again, ProRes encode and decode engine, ProRes encode and decode engine, two ProRes encode and decode engines. And then this one over here has got four ProRes encode and decode engines. You can see the major difference there. So what that basically helps with is like export times and all that kind of stuff built into like video editing and other various tasks that are going to be high-end stuff, maybe some 3D rendering and stuff. So you're going to get a massive difference, sometimes double the speed there in export times and stuff like that. So if you're doing a ton, that's the thing you want to look at, not so much everything else. Now, everything else is going to matter, but the cost will as well, right? The cost is huge. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom here, this $19.99 is a sweet spot. Now, obviously, I have the M4 Mac Pro, M4 Mac Mini Pro sitting over there, and I got it for like 11 something at Micro Center. Here it says $13.99. You can get it on sale sometimes, but this one over here is $19.99. I think it's just such a great deal for someone that really needs that power. Now, not everyone does. I'm not saying you should get that, but when you jump up to this one over here, the Ultra, it starts at 4,000, goes up to like 14 or 15,000. I just don't see a lot of people needing that at all, because once you get those, double the engines as far as the decoding engines and the ProRes engines, it's going to make a massive difference. So just wanted to point that out. If you're thinking about it, let's keep moving. This next one's actually just a really fun story, so we're just going to jump right into it. Right here from 9to5Mac. Is it time for some truly colorful Mac Air models? And you can see the picture here. They got the reds, the greens, the blues, and all this stuff. Would we actually want this? And that's the question. I think I would. Maybe, maybe not. But what do people think? So we're going to kind of scroll down here, and they did some kind of poll here. It says right here, should Apple make colorful MacBook Air models, right? I'm going to say preferably yes, and then we're going to see what the stats are on this. So I'm going to click on that. But let's take a look right here. What do people say? There's over almost 1,300 votes here. Take my money, yes. That's the highest one. Almost 50%, yes. 25%. So right here, 40, 50, 60, over 70%, whatever that is. It's just massive, right? Well, close to 70. So it's basically going to be in there somewhere. But, that's a huge amount of people that want it. Unsure is kind of here at 5.28. Preferably not is going to be 9.31%, and nope is 12%. But that's only about 21% that don't want it. But the rest, about, let's just say 70 to 80% do want the color change. They want it to be vibrant. a lot of times what they're saying here is the blue color they came out with is nice, but it's not really, sometimes you can't even tell the difference between it and silver, right? So that's kind of interesting, that little chart there. And then it says, what color would you buy? Now I like blue, right? I'm going to click on this, but we're going to see what color would you think would be the ones people want. Let's find out here. This is just interesting for me to kind of see, right? Purple. Well, let's just look right off the bat. Blue's number one. Geez, that's what I voted. 23.7% of people here want blue. What's the second most one here? Let's just see. Red, it looks like down here. So 116 votes at red. That would actually be kind of cool. What's number 3 here? Let me just see here. Purple, maybe? No, green. Green's right in here. Right after that is green. So that's right next. And then purple. And then let me just see here. Cyan. Well, there's orange in here as well. And then pink's the last one. So everyone, they keep making pink products, which is weird. Apple always seems to have a pink product. And look at this. Nobody wants it. Because even girls, I don't think, like the pink color. I don't know what's going on with that. That's actually really weird. Almost 750 votes there. So that should tell Apple something. In the comments, would you guys want these colors or not? I don't know. Like I said, colors can be deceiving, just like that beer. But I think it's fun to add a little snap to it. But I still kind of like the blue color that they came out with. I think is really sharp, looks professional, and you're not going to look crazy like walking into a board meeting with a bright green laptop or something, right? So overall, I think more people would buy them. All right, let's go through some sales now. I have a couple sales here to show you, and then we'll keep moving through the stories. First one's over here. This is just something to note here. This is, you're going to look at this and say, this is not a sale. This is the M2 MacBook Air here, 16 gigs of RAM, 256, $949. You're going to say, why in the world would you buy that, right? Well, keep in mind that they are still offering a coupon here. And look at this. You can apply a $250 coupon right now to this. Amazing. Look at that. I don't know what that comes down to. That comes down to about $700, so $699. So you're going to be in that same cost as it was before, right? The $699 cost. So even though it looks like it jumped way up, I don't know why they do this, but there's a coupon in here still. So you can still get it for that, like right around $699 cost on here, which is unusual, but it's still in there. A lot of people just don't see that, and they just flip through like, this is crazy. But then look at the fine print, and it's in there. So $699 still. Okay, I think this next one's an interesting choice just because of all the stuff you get with it. Take a look here. This is the 15-inch M3 MacBook Air as well, 15-inch, but it's got 24 gigs of RAM. So that's like basically a double upgrade, even though it's really only a single upgrade now. But back then in M2 life, it was a double upgrade, and it's got an upgrade on the SSD to 512, which is nice as well. And that's $1399. So 15-inch right now is going to be what I think it's $999, $10, $1199 starts at. So I mean, it's you're going to get something for that. You just have to weigh the option between the M3 and the M4 there. Now, you guys tell me. This is the lowest price it's been, I think, for this model, and especially with 24 gigs of RAM. So I still think this is a good option for some people that are kind of RAM intensive. Instead of 16, they're just running out of a little bit of space. I think the RAM would override the chip. You get what you get from the chip there. So you guys tell me, though, is that a good deal? Okay, this next sale, then we'll move on to the stories, is from B&H. If you guys know what that is, obviously I think you do. Right here, you can see it on here. This is the Apple 14-inch MacBook Pro. It's on sale right now for $1999, savings of $600. How are we getting $600 savings here? Well, let's take a look what this is. This is the Apple M3 Pro. It's only the M3 Pro, 14-inch though, but 36 gigs of unified RAM and 1 terabyte SSD. So under $2,000 for 36 gigs and a 1 terabyte SSD. That's pretty crazy. Mind you, it's the M3. But anyways, it's on sale right now at B&H if you want to check it out. But if you're going to be looking for these things in the future, use this as kind of the low price alert for this exact model or this exact spec, and then keep looking. Okay, this next one's all about the macOS and iOS and some changes that are coming, and I bet you don't even know about this. From Apple Insider right now. It says right now, Apple is planning to make enormous design changes to iOS 19 and macOS 16 right here. So let's just scroll down here. It says it's been a while since they've made a dramatic or seen a dramatic overhaul of any of Apple's operating systems, but we could see the biggest ones in years as soon as WWDC. Apple is gearing up to overhaul all of its operating systems in hopes of making its platforms more cohesive. The idea is that the change should make the platform feel more familiar to people coming from one device to another. So you can see in here, what are the changes? It says the new updates are expected to come later in 2025. Apple will update its icons, menus, apps, windows, and system buttons. Now, before you get too excited, they're not going to be updating iOS or the actual iPad OS too much. A lot of people are thinking they might merge that into like macOS or something. They're saying that's not going to happen. This is going to be more of a kind of complete design change and all that kind of stuff. So just keep note it's coming, we think, and it's going to be a big change supposedly. So we'll have to see if Apple actually follows through. Okay, this leads me to the next story, which actually infuriates me. I think Apple's Tim Cook should come out and apologize to people for this. To put in the comments if you agree with this. 9 to 5 Mac. It says Apple adds new disclaimer on its website advertising delayed AI Siri features. So we'll get into this in a second. Let's just kind of scroll down. It says right here, Apple is still reeling from last week's news that the most compelling new Apple intelligence feature for Siri have been indefinitely delayed. Over the weekend, it pulled a YouTube ad showcasing personal context running on the iPhone 16. So we can kind of scroll down here. Here's a screenshot of what they're kind of doing now. Here's a screenshot of the newly added message on the iPhone 16e product page. So it says down here, with all new superpowers, Siri can assist like never before. Awareness of your personal context enables Siri to help you in ways that are unique to you. But down here it says Siri's personal context understanding, on-screen awareness, and in-app actions are in development and will be available with a future software update, but it does not list what it is, all right? So I think that's number one. So number one, they're not really listing anything, but let's just keep going. Okay, this next one for Mac Rumors is the same kind of vein here, where they're actually Apple's changing a lot of things, and they're not just trying to make it like very subtle to people, and I just don't like it. Like right here, there's some before, here, and after. This is for Mac Rumors, but they're saying that Apple had this in their text here. Before it said, with richer language understanding and awareness of your personal context, see personal, Siri is more capable and helpful than ever. They changed it without telling anybody. With richer language understandings and expansive product knowledge about your devices, Siri is more helpful than ever. So they changed it in expansive product knowledge from personal context. See that difference there? And they don't, they're just slowly making these little changes here and there so that people, it doesn't become a huge problem for them. But I think it already is. All right, we can read all this little hidden stuff here and there, but why is this slowly collapsing on Apple Intelligence, all right? It's because people that used to be on their side are now turning against them. Right here from Apple Insider. It says, Apple is lying about Apple Intelligence, John Gruber says, and he's right. So this is a longtime Apple pundit right here and has launched basically a strident attack against what he says are Apple's lies over Apple Intelligence rollout, and he's spot on with this argument and conclusion. So for years, John Gruber has hosted the talk show, an extended post-WWDC conversation with Apple executives, Craig Ferragini. And he basically, obviously this is him right here. So it looks like they've had a really close contact before. He always gets invited in. Now he's calling Apple out directly. This guy says right here, says the fiasco here is not that Apple is late on AI, he writes. The fiasco is that Apple pitched a story that was not true or wasn't true. One that some people within the company surely understood wasn't true, and they set a course based on that. So he's basically saying, he's calling them out directly, saying that they knew that they didn't have all these products out. They didn't know when they could be done. Now they're having difficulty. They sold it. They sold people new devices with all the stuff on there, and now you can't even get a lot of the features, especially the Siri stuff with the personal context. So he's really upset. And this is kind of what's closing the doors in Apple as it slowly does this to them. And I think they may have to start refunding people money and stuff like that in the near future if this gets any worse. All right, so for this next one, it's going to sound so unusual when I tell you this, but hear me out for a second. I actually use, out of all, if you watch my channel, I do Thunderbolt 4 enclosures, Thunderbolt 5 enclosures. I do speeds up to 4,000 megabytes per second on SSDs for Apple storage. But I end up using something like this more than any of them, right? This is an enclosure by AData. If you look at my screen, it's $20 right here. And you can see I bought it over here. $20, and it's this basically waterproof case in here. You can open it up, and you can put in 2.5-inch SSDs in there and just throw them in there. And I have actually one sitting in here. I have a 4 terabyte 2.5-inch SSD in here. This is one by Oracle, the Y20, and it works just flawlessly. So the reason I love this thing is I can go ahead, I can lock that in. I can take that out 1 second, and I can go ahead and put in about 20 other ones that I have labeled over here. And these are all 2.5-inch drives. And it's just golden because you can just change them out so quickly. Number two, they never get hot or they never overheat. You never have to worry about the thing, if you touch it, you're going to burn yourself like some of the M.2 drives. You get into some issues with them drawing too much power, all that kind of stuff, fan noise. These things just work. So if you're going to be doing anything but video editing on them, or if you're not running your whole OS off of these things, these are just better, I think. They're simpler, better than the M.2s in a lot of ways because I just never have problems with them. They're convenient and they're cheap. So if you go over here, what I got over here is the Y20, and they don't have the 4 terabyte for some reason in here yet. They might come back with it, but it was only $150. But the 2 terabytes only $87, and 512 gigabytes is $29. You add that to a $20 case, and it's just a good option because you can change it out so quickly. But like I said, you just there's no heat involved, and it just works flawlessly. Just keep in mind that this enclosure here does have a USB-A. I use a dongle that basically converts it to USB-C because I have a bunch of those. So if you're thinking about this, but if you just like this kind of stuff, I mean, you know, when you run in like a big file or something, I tend to, a lot of my testing and stuff on a lot of the devices, you're going to get faster speeds of, copying something over on these 2.5-inch drives than the M.2s, because the M.2s, they go fast, they heat up a lot of times, and then they slow off. These things seem pretty solid around the 500 megabytes per second, and that's just my experience. I just wanted to kind of say that. It's kind of funny, but I figured I'm not trying to sell you this or anything like that. I just thought it was an interesting topic. Okay, one last thing about the Siri we were just talking about too. There's a lot of things that kind of trickle down from that complication of not having that ready yet, right? Here's one of them right here. This is from Mac Rumors. It says Apple's Smart Home Hub now postponed due to delayed Siri features. Apple has pushed back the launch of its rumored Smart Home Hub due to the delayed Siri features, according to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman. It says at one point the company had hoped to announce the product in March, he said. And, that's coming up, and that's right now, actually. But because of the device, to an extent, relies on the delayed Apple Siri capabilities, it has been postponed as well. So he's basically just saying because of Siri has been, the actual modifications to Siri has been postponed, so is this now. And this is actually the thing that most people are waiting for, this Home Hub. So again, this is all trickling down to something that's just not right for Apple to do. I think they need to do a formal apology. And if you're not mad enough about all that, here's one thing that just started popping up as well. Just check this if you can. Right here, this is Mac Rumors. It says basically iOS 18.3.2 re-enables Apple Intelligence if you turned it off. So with new iOS software updates, Apple has been automatically turning Apple Intelligence back on again, even for users who have disabled it. Basically a decision that has become increasingly frustrating for those that don't want Apple Intelligence. So it says down here, after installing 18.3.2, iPhone users have noticed that Apple's Intelligence is automatically turned on regardless of whether it's turned off prior. There is an Apple Intelligence splash screen that comes up after updating it, and then there's no option other than tapping continue, which basically turns the Apple Intelligence back on. So while you're kind of being notified of it being, if you can recognize that splash screen, a lot of people just click on it and they won't even, they'll think like, hey, it's just advertising. But just check, because it does use that 7 gigabytes of data. And that's another complication there. I was reading through the article, and like some people don't have the space for it. And then all of a sudden it's filling it up, and they're kind of in trouble there. So we'll see what happens. But basically, it's just another thing to check on your iPhone. Okay, so we got a couple of their sales right here. This is a low price alert, so I wanted to showcase it. Here's the Western Digital 2 terabyte. This is the Western Digital Blue SN5000. This is actually it's a mid-range, I would call it a mid-range one. It's up to 5,150 megabytes per second. Obviously, if you have a Thunderbolt 4 enclosure, this is going to be perfectly capable. It's $119 right now for a 2 terabyte. Used to be $159, $119. I think is the low price alert right now. So definitely check that out. They have some good prices from Western Digital now, and the Blue is pretty good. I mean, it's kind of, like I said, made for internal computers and stuff like that. So, I mean, they have all these different designations, like red is for NASA's and stuff. It's got more read and writes. But this is a good solid range one for under $120 for 2 terabytes. It's a good deal. Okay, this next one I want to show you is actually not in stock right now. It got sold out before I could even show you. Just interesting to note, here's by Western Digital. They actually came out just recently with a 26 terabyte Western Digital Red. This is a Pro NAS. This is just an HDD, so it's basically 7,200 RPM, and it's $569, but it's 26 terabytes. It's the biggest one they're offering right now. I think the biggest before was 24 terabytes. They did a whole press release on this and everything like that, just to showcase what it was. So there it is right there, but you can see it's $569, but it looks like it's sold out. Now, this is the question I always have for people, like if you're watching, would you buy something like this at 26 terabytes? Do you think that's good, or do you want to buy multiple drives maybe at 10 or 12? Because do you want all your eggs in one basket? That's the question. And when you get these huge drives like this, you have to buy basically 2 of them or 3 of them because you have to back them up, right? If you don't, then all your eggs are in one basket. So this is the question. But they keep raising these up. I mean, 26 terabytes on one spinning disk is incredible, right? But do you really want to do that? That's the question. Or do you want to spread it around? I like to spread my stuff out. That's why I do all this crazy stuff down here. Plus, I like technology. I like buying the technology. So I don't buy one huge expensive thing. I like buying the small stuff. But everyone's different. Post in the comments. This video is not sponsored by Western Digital. Trust me. I wish they would sponsor it and pay me, but they don't. But I thought this was kind of a cool thing. I found this when I was looking up the other stuff. They actually came out with something called the G-Raid Project 2, 52 terabyte right here. This is going to be a SanDisk Professional G-Raid Project 2 drive. It's a two bay enterprise class storage system here. 52 terabytes right now. $16.99. So they're offering this right here. Now again, this is not going to be the fastest storage. I think it's like up to 200 and something megabytes per second. But stuff for backing up projects. If you have a lot of storage needs, 52 terabytes. Now this one's actually going to be, well, this one says pre-configured in RAID 0. So if you do that, obviously if you configure this differently, you're going to lose a lot of that storage. That's the question there. So that kind of begs the question again, 52 terabytes, you need to back that up. So you need basically 2 of them. Okay, this next one I thought was an interesting article because if you think about this for a second, there's all the security in the world. Your Apple device can be so secure, but really the people working at these companies is so important. That's where the biggest security leaks are, right? So take a look over here. Apple Insider. It says crime blotter. Suspects charged in international new age porch pirate ring. So this will make more sense in a second. It says 13 people charged in federal new age porch pirate case here. At the end of February, federal prosecutors in New Jersey filed charges against 13 people who said they alleged basically operated an international network that stole thousands of shipments of iPhones and other electronic devices around the United States. Number one. But look at this down here. Prosecutors say that they stole FedEx shipments containing iPhones, iPads, and Samsung devices while also bribing employees of certain cell phone carriers to obtain orders, names, tracking numbers, and delivery addresses. Some of the defendants operated a fence operating out of it doesn't really matter. So in this case, again, it's not so much all the security around all the things you can do. It's so much that the inside people were they're bribing the inside people information to give them where the tracking was going and all that information. They were showing up and then stealing it. But let's just keep moving because there's another case here that just came out that's kind of the same thing. This one right here says 4 arrested in $500,000 Florida UPS theft ring. 4 suspects have now been arrested in what police are calling a theft ring involving the stealing of US UPS packages containing iPhones, Macs in South Florida. According to CBS 12, the ring was caught when T-Mobile realized they had lost more than $500,000, right? So if you scroll down, it says they put the guts and GPS tracking on the devices, which led them to California. 3 of those arrested so far, per the report, are UPS employees. So the UPS employees on the inside were actually obviously stealing these devices. So this begs the question, you can do anything you want for security, like let's say your Apple password, but if you can social engineer your way into it because you can, and Apple's probably better at most than most at this, right? But think of any other company, just put the name in somewhere. Let's say you lost your password, you did this or you did that. You can call that company and you can kind of get your way in there. Or even worse, you can work for that company. Once you work for that company, you have all the information right in front of you in a lot of cases. Now, a lot of cases you don't. It'll be obviously hashed and secure and all that stuff. But in other things, banking numbers at banks and stuff, it just makes you wonder, how secure is our technology and what can you do? Once again, I hope everyone's having a great week. It's getting a lot hotter here in Chicago, so we're going to have some storms and stuff coming up. Anyways, enjoy your weekend, all right? Here we go, 9 to 5 Mac. Here's some just good news if you're a gamer. It says Crossover 25 brings Red Dead Redemption 2 and more games to macOS. So finally, we're going to get that game, which is actually pretty good. So it says Mac gamers are probably familiar with Crossover, a platform that lets users run Windows software on a macOS and Linux as if it were native software. Codeweavers, the company behind the app, has now released Crossover 25 with a series of enhancements, including support for more games like Red Dead Redemption 2. So they're coming out with a whole bunch of new games here. Let's just see what they have here. It says it has more than 5,000 changes in this new version of it to support a variety of apps, include basically games on macOS and Linux. The new version of Crossover is based on Wine 10, which includes better HIDPI support for Retina displays and basically Vulkan drivers. So for Mac users now, Crossover now includes a new configuration system that will make it easier to play games out of the box, all right, without additional mods or the need to use game-specific cross-ties. With the game update, such as the Elder Scrolls, Skyrim and Special Edition, the Fallout 4 now work without the need for patches even. So it also enables multiplayer support in Age of Empires 2, Definitive Edition. So you get the idea. This new version is making Mac gaming better. So just wanted to, just throw it out there. So if you're thinking about getting into Mac gaming, just make sure you check out, obviously, Crossover 25, the new version of it. And it should be a lot better than the old version, but it's doable. Now, it's not perfect, but you can play a lot of games you never thought you could by using this, so definitely check it out. Oh, yeah, and then one last thing. If you have a subscription to Apple Arcade, usually the games aren't as extravagant as those, but you get some good games. And if you're a fan of this game, I just wanted to give you a note it's coming out. Right now, 9 to 5 Mac, Apple Arcade announces 6 new games, including RollerCoaster Tycoon here. You can see it there. So I know a lot of people like that game for some reason. Put in the comments if you play it. But there it is. But the other 5 games here, you got Space Invaders Infinity, Gene Evolve, Puffy's RollerCoaster Tycoon in here, the Game of Life 2 Plus, whatever that is, Sesame Street here. And then I think there's this Katamari Damacy Rolling Live. I don't know what in the world this thing is, but it says it's one of the standout releases. I've never heard of that before. I have no idea even how to pronounce that. But if you think that's a good game, I guess put in the comments as well. I've never heard of that before. Anyways, so some new games are coming out overall for the Mac, but it still needs to keep moving forward. And that's another thing Apple promised, right? They promised to have all these developers on board and stuff, and we haven't seen that as much. We have these third parties kind of working, like I just mentioned, that other third-party company helping us out. So we'll see if that picks up. Let's hope it does. Okay, so we know that the Apple iPhone 16e, kind of the newest SE phone, right? It just came out, and we're not sure how well it's going to sell. I just thought this was interesting numbers here. So it says right here, Apple's lowest selling iPhones still crush rival premium flagships. So not to, we'll just go right down to the chart here. It's kind of interesting. So if you look at this chart, it's really interesting. This is 2020, the 6th month down here, all the way to 2024. But this is the percentage. Now, the purple here is going to be the SE phone, and then the mini phone here is this kind of orange color. So this is what so out of all the phones being bought that year, it was 19% were the SE way back in 2020. Look at that, then 22% of the phones. But then look what happened over time. Then we got into the minis. A lot of minis were being bought. If you add these two together, right, there's a lot of these being bought. Never would have guessed that. But just recently, since 2022, as you can see, obviously, very, very few people are buying them. It's down to 5% right here, which is way down here. And obviously, we're going to see hopefully a jump in 2025 because of that 16E. But it's really, I thought this was interesting. So about 5% of the people out there right now are using either the SE or the Mini. And obviously, we're going to see if it jumps. That's going to be a key statistic. But the reason this article was kind of cool is they're saying even at this 5% down here, 4%, they're saying that there's actually more phones sold, that 4%, than the flagships of like Google phones and other phones like that, a lot of those other phones. So even though it looks like a low number, the sheer volume of them is higher than some of the flagships of other companies, which I thought was interesting. So it makes me feel a little bit better about the 16E. The 16E is not for me because I've learned some things with the camera and stuff, which we'll talk about soon, but I still think that, if I'm going to get something, I think I'm going to get the straight 16. Okay, I guess we're going to jump into that right now as far as the camera. Take a look, Mac Rumors. Here's how the iPhone 16e camera stacks up against its siblings. So I read through the article. We're going to scroll down here, and this is the important thing to take away. According to this guy here, he's got a weird name, so that's actually someone's name. The iPhone 16e isn't on par with the iPhone 16 Pro or even the 16, but it's on par with prior non-Pro phones like the iPhone 14 Pro. The fact that it has no sensor shift stabilization is the biggest limiting factor because it cuts down on image quality in low light and in night shots. That's the main reason I'm not going to get it right there. So I take a lot of pictures, as you see my videos from my other videos. I take pictures of close-up of products in a darker room with lights and stuff coming in, blue lights, yellow lights. And I do it a lot of times with the phone, right? So here we are. If I'm getting a brand new phone, I don't want the quality to go down from the phones that I can get, obviously, right now, that even like a 15, it says it's not as good as a 15. So this is the main reason I'm not going to get it. Now, I get a lot of night shots and stuff, but if you don't, maybe it's not that big of a deal. It also says for the money and stuff compared to other phones out there, maybe some of the Android phones, it does a really good job. Not as good as the Google phones, obviously. I love those, but you get the idea. So if you're going to be into low light photography, it's not a good choice. Okay, let's keep moving. This video is kind of slowly turned into an Apple bashing video, although I swear I love Apple. I'm just trying to make them better, all right? That's why I'm doing all this. And this next article is a little bit in the same vein here. Right here, it says Mac Studio and Mac Studio Display turned 3 today. Now, obviously, you can see here. So these were, this was back, March 8th. Today's not March 8th, so it was a couple days ago. But at the end of the day, it's finally turned 3. But I was thinking about this. As soon as I read that, I'm like, geez, when are they going to update the Studio Display, right? 3 years. Now, any other company, do they really wait 3 years on one product, especially when they only have like 1 or 2 monitors? They have 2 monitors. Why are they waiting 3 to 4 years to update these products? Wouldn't Apple sell just a ton of monitors if they updated it every year? I totally think so. So who knows? This next one has me scratching my head a little bit, but if you have a Mac Studio, this is kind of interesting. So Mac Rumors, it says new Mac Studio support low power mode with 2 benefits. Well, low power mode is basically so you can lower some of the power output, and you can also lower the fan noise if you want. So these things pump out a lot of power. So if you're actually not using it that much, or if it's just sitting idle, you can go into low power mode, which again, if you're buying something $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, it doesn't seem like you'd use that as much as you would use, maybe use something like high powered mode, which this is where I scratch my head. So we go to the next article over here, and this one's actually from 9 to 5 Mac. It says Apple's most powerful Mac ever is basically missing a key feature, and it's basically going to be high power mode. So high power mode obviously lets the fans ramp up. It cools it a lot more, gives it a little bit more, a little bit more way to, suck out all the power out of it, right? Because you need those fans running so things don't heat up. Well, right now, it has no way of adding high power mode, but you can only do low power mode. And this is the most powerful Mac there is. So you can kind of tell me what the difference is there. It's just interesting to note if you're going to be buying this, that there's no high power mode. And then here's a good story here. It's interesting to me because I would never have guessed this. Apple Insider says Apple Watch loses steam as global smartwatch shipments drop in 2024. I didn't think that the overall shipments of watches would drop. It says the first time ever, global smartwatch all over shipments declined in 2024, with Apple experiencing its sharpest downturn yet. According to a recent report, the worldwide basically smartwatch market fell by 7% in 2024. So 7%, is it finally gotten to a point where everyone's bought them that wanted them? I think that's where we are. It says marking the market's first ever annual decline ever. Just this is overall smartwatches. And Apple maintained its leading market share position. So Apple's leading the market, obviously, but it saw a significant 19% year-over-year decrease in sales. Now they're marking that up to not coming out with the new Ultra. I don't know if that's true, and also the 10 version not being that much different than maybe the 9. So we'll see, but it's just interesting that we finally kind of went over that hill, and we were up here. Now we're slowly, people are starting either to get used to them, or they have them and they don't change out every 5 or maybe 5 years they keep them. So we finally gotten to that point. Okay, so we're going to wrap this video up. I hope everyone's having a great weekend. And again, cheers to everyone out there. This was a kind of a slow week here as far as news, so I hope this one is okay. I know I bashed Apple a lot. I love Apple, trust me, I do. If you watch all my other stuff, I love trying to help people with it, but I got to call them out where I do, and I love doing that sometimes on the weekend when I have a beer. So we'll talk to everybody in the next one. Have fun out there. Enjoy the weekend. Peace.